This will be my video lecture in legal aspects in the tourism and hospitality industry. No? And today, it is September 8, 2022. It's a Thursday afternoon. And as usual, as is customary, we will still have to discuss certain important provisions in the 1987 Constitution that affect the tourism and hospitality industry. But before that, I caution you, or I want you to have along with you a copy of the Constitution, so that whenever I discuss a certain provision of the Constitution, you could follow through. No? So last time, we talked about, of course, the archipelagic doctrine. No? And the archipelagic doctrine is what is being referred to as defining the boundaries or the territories of our country, the Philippines. And that one is stated in Article 1. Now, Article 2, on the other hand, speaks about declaration of policies, no, and state principles. Article 2 of the Constitution speaks about the declaration of principles and state policies. No? State policies. So if you will notice, if you have the Constitution, the declaration of principles are what we call the state. No? These are state policies. No? Which of course are being espoused or followed by the government. No? The government. So let us take some of them. No? I will just have to mention some of the state policies and some of the principles that are being followed by our government. Now, in as much as what we are taking is concerned about tourism and hospitality industry, so I'd like to call your attention to Section 2. You read Section 2 of Article 2. You also have to read Section 7 of Article 2. Also Section 8 of Article 2. And of course, I'd like you also to, you also have to read Section 19 of Article 2. Okay? And these articles that I mentioned to you have something to do with the tourism and hospitality industry. Okay? So when we talk about tourism versus hospitality industry, are they one and the same? When we talk about laws affecting the tourism industry as compared to what we call the hospitality industry, are laws one and the same? Tourism laws and hospitality laws. So what will cover this aspect and that aspect also here for tourism laws, because this one entails the activity of travel, we shall be concerned about what? Well, we will be concerned about local laws affecting tourism, local laws, also state laws. No, state meaning national laws, and of course international laws. No, international laws, because travel will of course involve the activity of going to one place or another to another, and the purpose will be for, of course, for business, for pleasure, and others. And what is the period? Within 1 year. No? Within 1 year. Now, in the case of hospitality, these ones all will involve what? Well, those that will affect the, when we talk of hospitality, what are the industries that are contained in the hospitality industry? Well, we're talking about lodging or accommodation, no? Lodging or accommodation. Okay, take note of the spelling of accommodation. It's double C, double M. What else? Of course, the food industry, food service, like restaurants. No? What else? Of course, it will also involve transportation. No? So basically, these are industries that are subsumed in what we call hospitality industry. And usually, the laws that apply to this will be confined to this. No? More on this. Sometimes only this. But if we talk on a big, on a broader scale, which one will have a broader coverage? Is it the tourism laws or the hospitality laws? Of course, it will be the hospitality laws because it encompasses everything. Even tourism laws will be part of hospitality laws. Okay? Clear? Now, I'd like you to take this down as your assignment number 2. No? Assignment number 2 will be you have to compare tourism versus hospitality laws. No? Compare the two. So, is there any distinction between tourism and hospitality laws? Now, number 2 would be you have to define or give examples. Number 2, give examples what will fall under the tourism industry and that of the hospitality industry. Well, I already mentioned some already, no? When we talk of the hospitality industry, we're talking about lodging. Also, we will talk about travel. No? So, if you will notice, it has a bigger scope, no? The hospitality industry, because it includes lodging, food service, transportation, travel, no? Whereas here, it is more confined on travel and tours, no? Travel and tours. So it's more restrictive, no? Compared to the hospitality industry. Okay? Last time also, because anything that you do or any activity falling under tourism and hospitality, you always have to refer to the different laws, no? To the different laws. And basically, the first law that you should learn and read if you are still in accord or already in conflict, it will be the Constitution. So, always, you have to refer to the Constitution because here, if you violate any provision thereof, if you violate any provision of the Constitution, then you are already infringing constitutional guarantees, and that is not good, infringing constitutional guarantees. So what I'm trying to say is that aside from the different laws, aside from the local laws, aside from the state laws or what we call national laws, international laws also, you also have to refer to the Constitution. Actually, this is very basic, no? You have to refer to the Constitution first because this is, as I told you, this is the basic law, basic or fundamental law, and it is also the supreme law of the land, no? Meaning to say that in case of conflict between the provisions of the Constitution and those of the local, state, or international laws, still the Constitution prevails. No? It will be the Constitution that is supreme. No? For that one, the Constitution prevails over and above any other laws. Okay? Here so far? So let us move on to Article 3 of the Constitution. Article 2, I have already cited to you the different provisions that you need to read. I think I mentioned 4 of the constitutional provisions under Article 2 that relate to the tourism and hospitality industry. Now we move on to Article 3 of the Constitution, which is Article 3. What is Article 3 of the Constitution? We talk about the Bill of Rights. No, the Bill of Rights. Now, when we talk about the Bill of Rights, of course, it talks about a list of rights, list of important rights of every Filipino citizen. Filipino citizen. Why does the Constitution list down all the important rights of every citizen? Well, of course, because we do not want, or we want to prevent any abuse coming from where? From the government. Prevent the abuse from the government or any other persons or entities. No? Persons or entities. So these are rights that are mentioned in the Bill of Rights. The rights mentioned in the Bill of Rights have to be protected against any abuse or abuses from the government or any other person or persons. Any other person or persons or entity or entities. Okay? So it's very important. Now for Article 3, under the Bill of Rights, the most important is Section 1. No, I'd like you to memorize Section 1 of Article 3. Because this one will be an all-encompassing basis also. So Section 1, memorize. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty or property. No? Without due process of law, nor any person deprived of the equal protection of the laws, no? So let us take this one by one. So in short, they cannot take your life away, no, because you're entitled to life. Now if they take your life away, that will run counter to what we call the natural law. They cannot also incarcerate you or put you into jail without due process of law. No? So these are very important. This is a constitutional guarantee for the protection of your life, for your freedom, and of course for your property. So no one can take that away unless with due process. Now what do we mean by due process of law? Here, this phrase. What do we mean by due process again? I think I have discussed this before. When we talk of due process, okay, due process of law, because Section 1 speaks about the due process clause, no? When we talk of due process of law, no? When we talk about due process, meaning for every story, there are always two sides, no? So every person who is aggrieved thereby, should be given a day in court. Who is aggrieved should be given a day in court. No? So what does this mean? Well, there is a need for a hearing or a trial to determine the what? The validity of the allegations presented. No? When we talk of due process, of course, there are always two sides of a coin. If somebody has been aggrieved, meaning agraviado, no? If a person has been aggrieved, of course, he should be given a day in court. No? Meaning, what is this day in court? To ventilate or articulate his side. Or articulate his side. No? Meaning, you cannot just accuse a person or you cannot just convict a person without giving him the opportunity to defend himself in court through the proper forum. It should be a trial or a hearing. Now, for due process, this is a principle of law that has two aspects. No? When we talk of due process, there are two aspects of due process. No? Two aspects of due process. What are they again? Two aspects of due process. DP would be due process. Well, we have the substantive aspect. Substantive aspect of due process. And then we have the procedural aspect of procedural aspect of due process. Now, let us take this one by one. When we talk of the substantive aspect, we are talking about certain specific provisions of law. Specific provisions of law. No? When we talk about the procedural aspect, well, it will be the means to try a case. No? Okay? Substantive, we are more of the substance. Procedural, we are more of the procedure or means. No? Now, this one pertains to a law, a certain law. No? So, for instance, if a law prohibits, say for instance, jaywalking, well, there is a substantive part. No? As to how you will prosecute jaywalking, well, it will also be included in that law. No? It could be through trial or hearing, but of course, before you have the trial or hearing, there will be what we call investigation first. So this one is describing already the procedure by which you could prosecute or you could convict somebody for jaywalking. So remember that these two aspects have to be complied with. Both the substantive and procedural aspects have to be complied with before any person or any individual could be convicted for a certain crime or could be convicted for a certain violation or transgression. Clear? So far? So remember that Section 1 of Article 3 speaks of the due process clause. No? And also there is also that nor any person be denied the equal protection of the law. So there is also the equal protection of laws. No? Equal protection. Equal protection of the law. No? This is also under Section 1 of Article 2. What does this mean? That there should be equal protection of the law. This means that every person should be treated alike. Should be treated alike. Meaning, regardless of your status in life, regardless of your creed, regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of what occupation you belong, all laws will be applicable to you. No? And here, of course, there is the principle which says rule of law. Rule of law, whether you are rich or poor, whatever station in life, it will be applicable to all. No? Without any form of discrimination. Clear so far? So Section 1 of Article 2 speaks of the due process clause and also the equal protection clause. No? Now, this brings me to one other principle of law. No? Section 1, we're still in Section 1 of Article 3, the Bill of Rights. No? We're still on that. Now, how can the government enforce this? Enforce these provisions? Well, we have the three inherent powers of the government. The three inherent powers of the government. Now, what are those again? The first is what we call police power. Diba? Police power. Second is what we call the eminent domain. And the third power, which is inherent in every government, is the power of taxation. When we say inherent, it's given. No? By virtue of the existence of the government, it is already given. No? Given. No? Meaning to say, it goes without saying that these powers are already part and parcel of the discharge of the duties and responsibilities of the government. Now, when we talk of police power of the state, what are we talking about? When we talk about police power, well, when we talk about police power of the state, we're talking about regulating, no? Regulating what? Behavior, actions, activities, regulating rights, what else? Regulating properties, etc. No? So meaning to say that you cannot do whatever you want because the government may enter and exercise its police power, so much so that if you are already violating national interest, no? You're violating national security, you're violating morals, no? You're violating the laws. Now, of course, the government or the state can intervene and exercise its police power, no? So, our actions or our behavior and the rights and properties that we have should not be contrary to law, should not be contrary to morals, to national interest, to national safety, national security, etc. No? Because if you are violating all those, then the state can come in and exercise its police power. So police power is more of regulation, no? Regulation. Regulating our actions, our rights, our properties. It's more of the regulatory power. Now, eminent domain is forcibly acquiring private property for public use, no? Forcibly acquiring private property for public use, no? So our property rights will not be absolute. It will always be subservient to the exercise of the state of its power of eminent domain. No? Say for instance, the government or the state would like to enlarge the highway, and part of that they would like to take a portion of your property. Can the government do that? The answer is yes, by virtue of the exercise of its power of eminent domain. But of course, here, when they take your private property, a portion of your private property, of course they need to pay you, and that is what we call just compensation. Clear so far? So they will take your property, but there is a remuneration that will be given to you in the form of just compensation. No, whatever the value of your property, then it will be bought by the government. And finally, the third inherent power will be the power of the government to tax people or levy taxes in the form of taxation. Remember that taxation is also one of the inherent powers of the government. because this will be the lifeblood of the government. Without taxation or without the taxes that they collect, then government machinery cannot run. So this one is very, very important. Now, for the power of taxation, the purpose is of course to generate revenues. No? The purpose of this is to generate revenues. No? Revenues for whom? For the government. Okay, clear so far? So here, the purpose of taxation is to generate revenues. Now for eminent domain, of course, they will take your private property for public use. No, remember, it will be devoted for public use. Taking private property for public use, but with the payment of just compensation. Okay, I think I have to stop from there. So next time, I'd like you to read something about, of course, we will just be taking the most important principles of laws, no? Here in the Constitution, the next important part would be when we take Article 4, which talks about citizenship. So I'd like you to memorize Article 4, specifically sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. No? I'd like you to read that, and of course Article 5, which talks about suffrage. Okay, I have given you the assignment already. That is all for today. Good afternoon, everyone.